Hello everybody, welcome back to the Project Success Cooking Certificate. My name is James. If we're just meeting for the first time, however, if you've been part of the certificate before, welcome back. If it's your first time online with us, then welcome to the online certificate. This evening I'm getting started right on time because we're going to be preparing a couple of things. If you're part of our meal kit program, I've sent you groceries for one of those things. We're actually doing a couple of different things this week. We are focusing this week on cuisine from one of my favorite, I was going to say one of my favorite places in the world. It's not actually a place I've ever gotten an opportunity to visit, but it is certainly one of my favorite cuisines in the world. We are preparing a couple of Indian dishes this week. If you've ever been to the Project Success Institute in person, then you know that this is a place that we prepare quite a lot of food from. One of my favorite dishes to prepare is a chicken curry. It's pretty simple, but it's so good. This week we're preparing two dishes, one of which I've never made before and one of which I've made only a couple of times. The one that I've never made before is called Aloo Gobi, which is cauliflowers and potatoes. And the one that I've made before is a chickpea curry, which we'll be making sort of in between because there's a roasting time that we're going to have to consider today. So let's get started. I want to start out by talking about the kitchen tools that I have around me. So if you're choosing to cook along with us, then you can have those tools ready as well. I have a cutting board, just a regular old cutting board. I have a kitchen knife. I'm going to be alternating between a couple of those possibly tonight. I have a baking sheet, and then on top of that, I have some aluminum foil, just normal old aluminum foil. I have an oven, which we'll be using this week, and I have a big cast iron skillet. When I get started with the chickpea curry, I'm going to be using a couple of other pots as well, but you don't have to worry about those. I'm also going to be using a smaller saucepan today because I'm going to be preparing rice to go with my aloo gobi and my chickpea curry. You don't have to though. If you'd rather, you can just use naan bread or you can use any other kind of leavened or unleavened bread to go with your meal. Or if you are like the person who originated this recipe, this particular kind of aloo gobi, then perhaps you won't have it with anything at all. That person's name is Priya Krishna, and we've prepared one of her meals before. If you were watching when we did the roti pizza, that's one of her recipes. So this recipe is one that she has shared with us, and it's different from the way that a lot of other aloo gobi is prepared because there is this roasting step. Okay, let's talk about the ingredients you should have on hand. I have just one big potato today. You might have two. The recipe calls for two, but I think I'll get by with just the one. I have a lot of ginger. I'm definitely not going to be using all of that ginger. I have a fairly small head of cauliflower. I wish it were bigger, but I had these groceries delivered, so there's not much I can do. I have some cilantro, which is almost completely wilted. But that's okay. It still tastes good. It's just not as good as if it were fresh. I have a lime, which I've already cut in half because I used a piece of lime to go with my Diet Coke the other day. And I have a yellow onion. I might be using a couple of those today. In terms of spices, I have turmeric or turmeric, however you say it. I have whole cumin seeds, so not ground cumin, although you could use that if you wanted to. I have red pepper or cayenne pepper. I have cinnamon. I have chili powder. I have garam masala, which is a combination of lots of different spices. And if you don't have some of those and you were preparing to cook with us today, don't worry about that because some of those are for the chickpea curry. All right, so let's get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat the oven. So I'm going to go back here and turn this on to 400 degrees. I don't think it's 450, is it? No, it's 400 degrees. And the first step I'm going to take in terms of chopping things up is I'm going to work with my potato here. Now, if you've ever cooked with me before, you know I hate peeling vegetables. I hate peeling anything, even though this isn't technically a vegetable. It is a root. I guess you could say, well, anyway, that's a whole other thing. So I'm not going to peel this. I'm going to leave the skin on because we're going to be roasting it. And then we're going to be mixing it in a skillet with some of our other ingredients. So the skin is totally fine. I'm also cutting the pieces small enough that it's not going to make much of a difference. But I am going to wash it first. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about getting every last bit of what might look like dirt off, because I'm going to be roasting it, and then I'm going to be cooking it in a very hot pan. So if I was worried about bacteria or anything like that, then it'll all come off or be burned off when I put it in hot temperatures. Okay, so next I'm going to take my kitchen knife, and the important thing to think about when you're chopping your potato is you're going to start by cutting it in half so that you have a flat surface that you can rest your round object on so it doesn't roll all over the place. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half again. So I went from this to this, and now I'm going to take each quarter of a potato and I'm going to cut it into slices, and I want to show you how wide the slices will be. So you want them to be about like this. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can, like that, right? So not like, you don't want them to be so thick that they're like fish and chips kind of chips. You want them to be kind of more like McDonald's fries width, but then they're that size, and you're not going to make them any smaller than that in terms of the, I don't know what you call that, the breadth? I don't know what dimension this is. Anyway, so yeah, you want it to be like that, and like that, like that, and like that, like that, and also like that. Okay, here we go. So it's time to do some chopping. I might go a little bit faster than you. I might go a little bit slower than you. Both are fine. You'll have a chance to catch up. And if you happen to fall behind, you needn't worry about that, because the video will be posted on the Project Success Institute Launchpad. So I decided that I would chop the potato by dragging the tip of the knife back, as opposed to using like a lever kind of technique. If I had a really sharp knife, then maybe I would use a lever technique, but my knife is medium sharp. It probably needs to be sharpened, and so I had a stronger feeling about doing the dragging technique. I still tried to use something like a claw technique to avoid chopping my fingers. So now I have my quarter of a potato sliced. That looks pretty attractive, doesn't it? Pretty cool. It looks like something you'd see on a menu at a fancy restaurant where they have pictures. I don't know. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my other quarter of a potato. There we go. I'm going to take my other half of a potato and cut it into 2 quarters. I always say quarters because I went to primary school or elementary school in England, and that's when you learn about fractions for the first time. So we don't say fourths, we say quarters. And I know that sometimes people say quarters in the States too, but back when I taught elementary school, we didn't say quarters, we said fourths, because in the textbook it said fourths. So I don't know what y'all say, quarters or fourths. Comment in the chat. Do you say quarters? Do you say fourths? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. All right, potatoes are chopped. Didn't take long. That's great. So I'm going to take my potatoes and I'm going to place them on my my baking sheet here, which I have lined with foil. I'm just going to sort of toss them around here. The only thing that I really need to pay attention to is the fact that they're not sticking together. Sorry, I live in Loring Park. There's sirens all the time. Also, we may at some point hear my cat or me responding to my cat. It hasn't happened yet, but my cat loves chewing on things. Particularly, my cat loves chewing on cables, like my charger cable for my phone, and I'm using that right now to keep my phone's battery going while I'm on Instagram Live. So if you hear me shouting at somebody named Yuli, it's because he's found a way to start chewing on my charger cable. I hope that doesn't happen. Okay, so again, just spreading these out. Nearly got it covered here. You don't have to worry about them all being in one row, because halfway through the roasting time, we're going to get in there and we're going to toss them, so we can get something like an even cook on all of them. All right, next, it's time to work with the cauliflower. So I'm going to peel off the leaves at the bottom here. I say like it's an easy thing. They don't want to come off. might have to get the help of my knife. Yeah, I'll get the help of my knife. I'm just gonna chop that off the bottom there. And then what I'm gonna do is, using that same knife, I'm gonna chop off the bottom of each of the florets. That's what we call, it's the same thing with broccoli, that's what we call each one of the little tree-looking things. Okay, so here we go, gonna chop off the bottom of that. And I do not want, oh, that just heard you leave. I do not want little crumbles of cauliflower. I want the trees, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna take my knife, and you can do it however you want, but the way that I always do it is I'm gonna take my knife and I'm going to cut around here, separating each one of the florets. So I'm gonna cut around here, separating each one of the florets. It's a French word, y'all. There we go. Now, I've got my little trees here, and I'm going to put them on the baking sheet. If they're too big, I'm going to break them up with my fingers. I hope you have more cauliflower than me. I feel like I don't really have enough cauliflower. I wanted a bigger head of cauliflower. That is one of the things about having somebody else do your grocery shopping that I don't love, is when they choose your produce and it's not the produce that you would choose. But I'm also really super grateful for the fact that they did it for me. I know it's gotta be tough to put yourself in a dangerous situation so that other people don't have to. And I know they have to go so fast too, because there's almost always somebody else to shop for right after. We don't have to worry too much about whether each cauliflower floret is too big. I'm chopping them down a little bit. But the reason why we don't have to worry too much about that is because they're going to be really softened by the time we're finished. We're not only going to roast them, we're also going to cook them in a skillet. All right, great. Got my cauliflower and my potatoes. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to, yeah, is that the part we're ready for? Sure. Okay, so now I'm going to take my olive oil. You can use any cooking oil you want. And I am going to drizzle the potatoes and the cauliflowers with olive oil. They say 3 tablespoons, but I'm just eyeballing it. My main thing is I just want to make sure that I get enough so that I can toss the oil so that it coats each one of the pieces. So now I'm just going to use my hands for this. Obviously, I washed my hands before I started. I'm trying to coat my potatoes and my cauliflower with this oil. Then I'm going to try and leave it in a pretty even spread. Like, it's okay if there's some overlap, but I don't want all overlap. It's very difficult for me to turn off my faucet with oily hands. So I haven't seasoned my vegetables at all yet. That's because they're going to be seasoned when they go in the pan. The recipe doesn't call for it, but I'm going to add a little bit of salt at this stage. Just because I always salt before I roast something, and so it seems weird not to. So hopefully there's not a reason why I'm not supposed to do that. Okay, so hopefully by now my oven is preheated. It's feeling pretty good, but I'm realizing that I've made a mistake. I left my Dutch oven inside the oven, which is where I store it, and so now that's going to be very hot. It's okay though. I do that all the time. So I'm just going to use my oven gloves to take it out. Let's put in the vegetables. And I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes, not because that's how long it's going to take to roast the vegetables, but I'm setting the timer for 15 minutes because after 15 minutes, we're going to toss the vegetables so they get an even cook. Now I need to figure out where I'm going to put my Dutch oven. So I think I'm going to put on my oven gloves here, and I'm going to move them, or move the Dutch oven to a different part of my apartment, because otherwise it's going to be taking up space on the stove that I need for other stuff. So I will be right back after these commercial messages. Okay, well, hopefully that gave you a chance to catch up if you've been cooking with us at home. Here's what we're doing next. We're going to take our onion and we're going to chop that. Instead of the larger pieces that we've just been using for the cauliflower and for the potatoes, we're going to dice this pretty small. But before I even get to that, I'm going to get my rice going. So if you're choosing to have rice with your aloo gobi, then you're going to want to start your rice now as well. You could start it later if you want to. I just don't want to be thinking about it when I'm trying to get other stuff started. So I'm making kind of a lot of rice because I want to have a lot of leftovers. So I'm going to take my cup measure and I'm going to do a cup of rice. So that means 2 cups of water. It's always 2 to 1. Some people use slightly different measurements, but that's always what I do, and it turns out great. So one time we had a big debate in the Institute about whether it's wise to add oil to your rice as you're cooking it. Honestly, I don't mind what you choose to do. I never have, and so I'm not going to today, but if that's the way that you and your family do it, then go ahead. What I will be doing, as you can probably predict, is adding just a little bit of salt to my rice. I'm also going to be doing something that some people think is weird, which is I'm going to use my rice cup measure to measure out the water as well. We may end up using my other cup measure that's designed for fluids later on, but if I can cut down on dishes, I do. Okay, so that's 2 cups of water, 1 cup of rice. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. Then I'm going to crank that on high. And I'm going to cover it and keep an eye on it. Once that boils, I'm going to turn it down to a low temperature, and I'm going to set another timer for 12 minutes so I can check in on the rice when it's at that point. Okay, time for us to chop up that onion. So I cut it in half so I have a flat surface. I get rid of the top of the onion. Then I can peel the onion. I just want to take off the top most layer. I don't have to go far beyond that. Unless you notice that the next layer is really green and you don't like strong onion flavor. I don't mind strong onion flavor. That's a little green, but I'm going to use it anyway. Then I am going to cut my onion this way, so in the same direction as the grain of the onion, if you want to think about it that way. But I'm not going to go all the way to the top of the onion. I'm going to keep that intact because it makes it easier for me to do the next thing. So you can see my onion is still together. It's being held together by the top because I didn't cut all the way to the top of the onion. So then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to cut across the grain, which will allow me to get those small pieces that I want. Place it flat on the cutting board, and now I'm using the lever method. Okay, and then that leaves just that little piece of unused onion there. half of my onion chopped. I'll cut off the end of this onion, this half of the onion, and I'll peel it. It's a very satisfying noise. What does that sound like? It sounds like tearing paper. Very wet paper, I guess. Tearing wet paper, not exactly what I would think of as being a pleasurable sensation, but that's what I'm going with here. Okay. There we go. All right, same thing again here. I'm going to cut with the grain. I don't go through the top. I'm being careful with my fingers, using a claw technique when I can. Rotating the onion. I'm going again, either the lever technique or dragging the tip of the knife. Keeping a pretty stiff wrist as I drag the tip of the knife. One thing I'm avoiding doing is going like this. I want to try and stay in control of the knife. And then use the lever technique once I get to the bottom of the onion. Great, I got a diced onion now. Now, depending upon the size of your onion, you may choose to use the entire onion or you might use half of it. I'm going to use half of mine because I'm going to use the other half with the other recipe that I'm going to be preparing today. Boy, it's starting to get hot in here. Okay, next, I am going to mince my ginger. Now, maybe you're using powdered ginger, maybe you're using ginger root. If you don't have any ginger around, it'll be okay no matter what. I love ginger. I'm using probably more than they recommend. They say 1 tablespoon's worth. I'm probably going to go a bit more than that. Just because it's a flavor I love. I can hear that my rice is ready to be turned down. Yeah, it's bubbling up. So I'm going to turn that down low. And I'm going to, right now this timer is at 7 minutes and 31 seconds. And so I'm just thinking once this is finished, I'm going to set a timer for the rest of the time that the rice should be going, which is about 12 minutes. So I'm going to keep that in mind. So one thing you can do with your ginger, if you're not in a hurry, is you can take a spoon and you can scrape off the skin. I guess you would call it the skin, even though it's a root. I'm going to be a little bit quicker because there's a bunch of stuff I want to get to here, so I'm just going to chop it off with my knife. The bad thing about that is you lose some of your ginger because you're chopping off some of the inside as well as the outside. But as I say, I'm moving kind of fast, so that's why I'm doing it that way. Probably not the world's best knife technique right now. Just trying to get all the little bits of skin off. There we go. And I'm left with something that looks like this. There you go. All right, so next I'm going to mince that. So just like I would with garlic, I'm going to cut that into small pieces, and then I'll make a pile of those small pieces, and I'll go again. I can hear that my vegetables are cooking away in the oven. It's exciting. Excuse the sounds. And I'm not going to cut my ginger as small as I ordinarily would because A, I don't mind getting a little bit of ginger in my mouthful, but I'm also not going to cut it super small because I'm going to be using a pretty high heat in the skillet when it goes in there. And if I have my pieces too small, then they'll turn into charcoal, and I don't want that. Okay, so I've got my ginger prepped. I'm going to save the cilantro for later, so let's get started with the skillet here. Still seeing my rice sort of bubbling over here. Okay, so I'm going to turn my skillet on to medium-high heat. I'm working with a gas stove here that's not marked. So I have to sort of guess where that is. Oh, y'all, that is smelling amazing in the oven. I'm going to add enough oil to coat the bottom. I don't have to completely drench it because as the oil heats, I can swirl it to coat the bottom. If I had a light pan, I could just lift it and go like this. But I'm using a big cast iron skillet. So instead, I'm just going to use my wooden spoon, and I'm going to make sure that the oil is covering the entire bottom of the skillet. I'm going to let that heat up just enough so that I see a little pale white smoke, or it seems like the oil is starting to shimmer. And then I'm going to add the cumin seeds. I'm pretty sure it's a tablespoon of them, right? Oh no, it's just a teaspoon. And you can use a teaspoon measure if you want to. I'm going to be putting it in the palm of my hand, so that's roughly a teaspoon there. It's about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more because I like cumin. There you go. So I'm using the whole cumin seeds, as I said. Oh, wow. I sprinkled the floor with cumin seeds, so maybe later on cumin will grow from my kitchen floor. And then I'll just be able to harvest the seeds and use them in next week's recipe, so I'll let you know how that goes. I like the texture and the flavor of whole cumin seeds. If you want to use ground cumin, you certainly can. If you do, you don't have to add it yet. So I can see that my oil is ready for the seeds, so I'm going to add them. I'm not going to cook them for long, just until they start to brown. And the best way of telling that it's time to move on to the next step is smell, because cumin seeds let off a pretty strong smell once they start to sort of, the way that Priya puts it in her video is once they start to dance in the oil. So I'm going to let them cook until they start to dance in the oil. While they're doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is measuring out my turmeric, or my turmeric, or however you want to say it. In England, they say turmeric. My mom taught me to cook, so I say turmeric. So turmeric doesn't add a ton of flavor. It mainly adds color. So I'm adding about that much. I don't know if you can see that on both screens I'm working with here. One of the things that Priya talked about in her video is something that I've never really thought about before, which is layering flavors. So you're allowing, oh, I can smell that now. So you're allowing the flavor of the cumin seeds to release, and then you add the next flavor. I've always just added all of my spices at the same time. So I'm wondering how it will change things if I don't. Maybe my food's just going to become that much better. Let me turn up my heat a little bit. Rice is looking good. I'm going to add in the turmeric. Mix that all around. Oh, I'm immediately getting a smell of that. Woo! Smells great. And I'm going to cook my, seems like I should add my ginger now. No, that's got to wait. Okay, I'm going to cook my onions next. And I'm just cooking the onions until they are see-through. They'll immediately turn yellow, which is awesome. And it'll probably take about 4 or 5 minutes for them to cook to the consistency that I want them to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to prepare my second dish. Ambitious? Yes. Awesome? Also yes. Okay, so I'm going to use a different pan for this, and it's super easy. So if you want to, you can cook this right along with me, or you can save this recipe for later. Okay, here we go. Just a super simple chickpea curry. I need to make some room on my range here. There, that'll do. Okay, so I've got, oh, I added all my onion. Oh no, that's okay. I can scoop it out and I can add it here. We're gonna use some garlic in this recipe, but I think I'm actually gonna use garlic powder Before I do that though, my timer just went off. So that means that I still have about 5 minutes left on the rice. So I'm going to reprogram my timer for 5 minutes. Because remember, we said we were going to go for 12 minutes on that. And I am going to check on my vegetables and toss them. Onions are looking good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull out the tray that my onions or that my vegetables are on. Then I'm going to use tongs to toss all the vegetables so that way they get a better cook. It's looking great. Got my tongs. It also helps to make sure that things don't stick. Because as things stand, I'm noticing that some of my potatoes are beginning to stick to the bottom. It's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, there we go. That'll do. Once again, I'm trying to make sure that we have a pretty good layer, because what we really want is that sort of brown, I was going to say brown crumbly, but it's not crumbly. You want that roasted brown look on your vegetables. That's what you're aiming for. Okay, back in. I'm not going to put it into the full 15 minutes because, to me, some of those vegetables are already starting to look kind of nice and roasty. So I've got 3 minutes left on this timer for the rice. So now I just have to remember I got to put on 7 minutes when it goes off for the vegetables. If you're using more than one timer, you can avoid all of this complication. I just kind of like to give myself these kinds of challenges. All right, speaking of challenges, the onions here are starting to look really good. So next, I'm going to take half of my onions, and I'm going to put them in this other pan to go with my chickpea curry. You can keep all of your onions in there. They're getting really nice and charred. So I'm going to add in my ginger and some of my other seasonings now. There goes the ginger. That's going into my onions for the Aloo Gobi, which is the same thing that y'all are making. I'm also, I can smell that already. And then after the ginger is giving up its smell, which as I say it is, then I'm going to add in a pinch of onion and garlic powder. I'm doing that to replace a classic Indian spice that I don't have called asafoetida. Asafoetida adds a sort of an oniony kind of flavor. So that's why I'm going to be using the onion powder and the garlic powder, which I haven't pulled out. So let me grab that now. Just a pinch of both, one, and one, just like that. Not a bunch, just a little. Stir that in. And then you get a choice to make here. If you have paprika, you can put in a pinch of that. If you have chili powder, you can put in a pinch of that. I'm going to use chili powder. I like a little bit of heat. Not much, just a bit. This dish isn't really about singeing off your palate. It's just about adding a bit of spice to it. And then I'm actually going to take the heat off of my Aloo Gobi. So my onions with all the spices that I just stirred in there, are going to take off the heat because my roasted vegetables are coming next and they're not ready yet. So I'm going to keep on going with my chickpea curry. On the other side here. Okay, so I'm going to add in some chili powder. One more than that. There we go. A little bit more than that. It's looking good. It's supposed to be a tablespoon. Yeah, so I want more. There we go. So I've added a tablespoon of chili powder to my onions. I'm going to add in some garlic powder. They called for minced garlic. This is no real substitution, but I'm going fast, so it'll be fine. Okay, how many more minutes did I say should I set for this? 3 more minutes, I think is what I said. But my rice is now done, so I can turn off the heat on that. Okay, and my vegetables will be good to check on in 3 minutes. Okay, here we go. I can do it. I can do it. I believe in myself. Here we go. I'm going to add in some cumin seeds into my spice mixture. I nearly spilled them all over the floor again. I like cumin seeds, so I added more than they said. I think they said a teaspoon. I added about a tablespoon. They said garam masala, so I'm going to add in some garam masala. We mentioned this before. Garam masala is a mix of lots of different spices, so we're kind of doubling up on things like cumin by adding garam masala because there is cumin in garam masala. And then we're going to add in turmeric. Just for color, really. So only about a teaspoon of that. And then I'm adding in some cinnamon because it's a flavor I really like in curry. Not a ton, just a little. And I'm going to add in some cayenne pepper as well because I like a bit of heat in my chickpea curry. There we go, that's plenty. I'm going to turn the heat on, add a bit of oil, add a bit more oil to what I already had in here. Make sure I turned the heat on the right one, if I did. Okay. Y'all, I am really turning it up this week, literally and figuratively. 2 dishes at once. Can't beat it. Okay. I'm going to let that cook until I can smell it. In the meantime, I'm going to open a big old can of diced tomatoes, and I'm going to add a couple of cans of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, whatever you want to call them. These are all going into my chickpea curry. I have a full-on cooking sweat going. That's the secret ingredient. People always say the secret ingredient is love. I say it is it's cooking sweat. That's the secret ingredient. That's where the added splash of sodium comes from. That's so gross, y'all. I'm having a habit of starting to say gross things in cooking class. There we go. I'm not going to drain my diced tomatoes. I want all of the tomato juice in my curry. But I am going to drain my chickpeas because the juice that comes in chickpeas, while it can be useful for some cooking purposes, it smells like cat food. And I don't want that in my curry. Only good smells. On another day, I might rinse out these chickpeas. I might let them drain. But I'm trying to do 2 dishes at once, so that's not happening today. That's my vegetable alarm just went off. So I'm going to add in my chickpeas. Here come my tomatoes. Mix that all together. Okay, and what I'm doing now is I'm trying to turn it over. The reason why I'm doing that is because all of my aromatics, all the nice things that we just added here, so all those spices and the onions and the garlic powder, I want that to be in my entire dish. I don't want that just to be at the bottom. So I'm turning it over, and then I'm going to turn up the heat on that until I get a boil. Not a full boil, but I want to see a bit of bubbling. And after I get it, I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to let it simmer so all of those flavors start to mix together. Now, my vegetable timer went off. I'm going to check in on it. Make sure I've got some cleared up counter space. It's hard to do in my tiny kitchen. If this all turns out, folks, I get an A. I get an A. All right, here we go. Oh my gosh, look at my vegetables. They look so delish. And here's what they look like. Here's what mine look like, folks. There you go. Can you see that? They're roasty, they're toasty. They are roasty toasty. Okay, I'm going to put them on something that can manage the heat. A little pad. There we go. And those are the next things that will be added to my onions, my ginger, and my spices for the aloo gobi. So that means it's time to turn the heat back on to my aloo gobi. Let's see if I can get the right one. Feels like I always guess wrong first. Oh no, I'm being sabotaged by my pilot light again. There we go. Turn that down a little. I want it medium high. Medium high is what we're shooting for the temperature on the aloo gobi. Now, I'm going to take my tongs. I'm going to be really careful because these just came out of the oven, so that means that my baking sheet is very hot, as is the foil. And I'm going to add my roasted vegetables to my skillet that I'm preparing the aloo gobi on. Meanwhile, I notice that my chickpea curry is bubbling. So I'm going to turn down the temperature on that to low. I'm going to grab my pan lid. I'm going to mostly cover that. Okay, let's go back to adding our vegetables. I really feel like the Iron Chef right now. This Indian feast I'm preparing multiple dishes at once. In the video, I saw that Priya just lifted up the foil and emptied all of the vegetables into the pan. So I'm not going to do that because my foil is very hot, A, and B, because I would make a terrible mess of it. You saw what happened to those cumin seeds. They're everywhere, guys. All right. Getting so close. Nearly all of my veggies are in there. Oh my gosh, those potatoes look so good. They look like delicious steak fries, and I just added one of them to the seeds on the floor, so when my cat comes in here later and tries to eat stuff off the floor, he will be treated to the most amazing treat. Okay, I got most of my vegetables up. A couple of my potato pieces are stuck to the foil. It is what it is. Okay, so now I'm going to mix everything in my skillet together. So I'm getting some of the turmeric on my veggies, so they're starting to turn a little yellow. I can show you that once I'm out of the danger zone here. And so the reason why Priya advises us to roast these vegetables before we put them in the pan is that when we do it that way, all of the liquids that are found to be released by the potatoes and the cauliflower are less likely to soak everything else. Because when you roast something, you're creating almost like, not quite a seal, but you are hardening the outside of the vegetable, so it makes it harder for it to get saturated with liquid. So it holds together, which is what we want. We don't want to over stir because otherwise the cauliflower is going to come apart. So I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm going to add a bit more salt. Because remember, the only salt that we've added so far has been before we put the vegetables in the oven. And they didn't even tell us to do that. I just improvised that solution. I'm an improviser. I can't help it. It's what I do. Oh my gosh, what a horrible sweaty mess I am right now. It is so gross. I'm going to show you what my pan looks like so you can see where we're at. If you are watching on YouTube Live, I'm very sorry you won't be able to see. Okay. Here we go. Here's my aloo gobi so far. It's looking pretty good. Like I said, trying to avoid over stirring. Oh my gosh, delicious. Okay, while that's finishing up, I'm not going to cook it for that long. Flip again. You just got to see a horrible mess on my countertop. Here I am again, cooking like a hurricane. All right, so it's finally time for us to get that cilantro ready. Hopefully your cilantro looks better than that. Gross. What is the deal with cilantro? You bring it home and within a day it looks like this. I feel like if I don't cook with my cilantro immediately, then it's like wilty and it looks like dandelions that a dog dragged out of a garden. So I'm going to use it anyway because waste not, want not. And it doesn't change the taste that much. It just, the texture isn't nice anymore. So whereas I might use whole leaves if I had like beautiful, bountiful, fresh cilantro, because I don't have that, I'm just going to cut it up kind of small. I'm almost going to mince it because I don't want to deal with that like gross old man cilantro texture. Old man cilantro is my name, and flavoring things is my game. So if you are one of those people who thinks that cilantro tastes like soap, then you don't even have to deal with this stage of the process. How lucky are you? Okay, the Aloo Gobi is done. It is done. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a taste. I think I'm going to put it in the serving bowl first. Do I have one available? Do I? Yeah, sure. It's kind of buried under my stuff here. Let's see. I'm going to use this one. And the fire trucks are coming because my cooking skills are too hot. So I'm going to, the rice will come later. I think what I'll do right now is I just want to taste the Aloo Gobi. So I'm going to put that in my serving bowl. Oh my goodness, this looks so good. All of the smells. I know that we got Tanadia cooking with us tonight. I know we got Kinsey cooking with us tonight. Kaylin's cooking with us tonight. I saw pictures of Tanadia's, what was it that Tanadia made with us? Did she make the ramen with us? I think maybe. Yes, she did. And hers looked so much better than mine, so I am reluctant almost to see the pictures that she sends me of this because I bet her Aloo Gobi is picture perfect, whereas mine looks like a sloppy, delicious mess. And that's not even describing my physical appearance, which is super sloppy, and I'm not here to judge whether it's delicious or not. Okay, so I'm going to grab some cilantro, sprinkle that on top, and then the final, and in some people's eyes, most important, I'm going to add some lime juice. This is where our acid component comes from. So if you, like I, are a big fan of Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, the TV series / cookbook, you know that there's usually an acid component to most well-balanced meals. This one's no exception. So I got my lime juice on top. And I'm going to keep my salt close by because I want to see if it requires any more. I feel like this meal hasn't had a lot of salt in it. Let's grab a fork. Let's see what it's like. Here's what mine looks like, folks. Here's my Aloo Gobi. There you go. All right, let's go to try. Hopefully it's not too hot for me to try. Okay, I got a bite here that has some potato, some cilantro, and some cauliflower. Let's see what it's like. Yep. Yes. Yes is the answer. Yes is the answer. That is so good. That is so good. If you haven't made this yet, you should make this. This is incredible. Oh my gosh. Everything about this is fantastic. I love the roasty flavors. I love all of those delicious curry flavors that we added at the beginning. I think of them as being curry flavors, but of course, they're common to a lot of Indian dishes. I love the lime juice coming through as well. That's a really nice balancing touch, and it is just salty enough. Just salty enough. So what I'm going to do with that next is I am going to serve that with basmati rice. I am going to heat up a bit of naan, and I'm also going to add to my plate some of my chickpea curry here. You could also serve this with dal if you wanted to. Dal is another word for lentils, and there are a million delicious ways of preparing lentils. My chickpea curry, I think, is done. Let me have a quick look and make sure. Where's my spoon? Okay, here we go. Taste that and see what it's like. That's good. It's good. It needs more salt, but it is otherwise very good. Oh, there's that kick. I like that kick. That's good. Hopefully your meal turned out as well as mine did. If it didn't, then you learned something, and there's nothing wrong with that. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, that's going to be really good. Thank you for cooking along with us this week. It's always so fun to know that there are folks out there who are cooking with us still. We're going to be doing this through the end of the school year, so tune in again next week, and we will cook something else. If you'd like to be part of our meal kit program, I've got to turn off my oven. If you'd like to be part of our new meal kit program where we send ingredients to you early in the week, and then later on you'll have the opportunity to cook with us on Wednesday night, then just let me know. You can do that in the comments if you want to. You could also email me personally if you'd like at James. jamesr@projectsuccess.org, or you could email programs@projectsuccess.org. You can go to our web. There's a million ways of getting in touch with us. So choose any one of them. Get in touch with us. Let us know how you want to be involved. We're still doing coding certificates on Thursday nights, so we'll be meeting again tomorrow night from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock on Zoom. If you want to be involved with that, let me know. I'll get you hooked up. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a terrific evening. I'm going to go cool off and enjoy my dinner. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.